The years that most historians refer to as the Second Industrial Revolution are 1870 to 1914. The Second Industrial Revolution caused the growth of several different industries such as electricity, coal, iron, and railroads and oil. We saw iron replace steel and electricity replace kerosene and other oil products in the home, and petroleum-powered cars and automobiles. With the invention of electricity by Thomas Edison, he helped create many of the modern conveniences that we know and appreciate today, such as telephones, the electric light, and radios. All of these inventions would help facilitate a higher standard of living in the U.S. and European countries and allow for information to transmit faster. The Second Industrial Revolution, thanks to the invention of steel and gasoline, saw the rise in cars and airplanes. The gasoline that powered these objects made it easier to transport goods and people over long distances. Since they were powered by gasoline from petroleum, they were available to the mass markets thanks to the large supply of petroleum oil in Europe and the U.S.
In Germany, new methods of production developed very late because the country was divided up into so many small states. Nevertheless, after the Custom Union of 1834, productive heavy industries developed in the mining regions of Upper Silesia. At the time, in the new building of railroads gave a decisive boost in the expanding steel production and mechanical engineering. Thanks to their high reserve of capital and high standards of training, German businesses were able to take over a leading role in the new chemical and electro-technical industries in the second phase of the industrialization toward the end of the 19th century. Although these developments were paralleled by strong workers' organizations.
The Industrial Revolution began in the 18th century in Europe. During the Industrial Revolution, there were many advances in technology, for example, steam power. People began to move to the cities looking for work because the cities were industrialized, which means they developed industries. This is known as urbanization. Many factories were built and the industries advanced. Citizens wanted to live closer to the factories that they worked at, causing the Western world to go from rural and agricultural to urban and industrial. Industrialization in Europe and the United States was caused by rapid development of technology, manufacturing, and trade. Europe is known for rapid development of manufacturing and trade. For example, the steam engine provided cheap movement of goods through waterways, causing canals to be built so resources could be transported with ease. The railroad system gave manufacturers a cheap way to transport their products as well. The railroads also gave people opportunities to travel and established time standards, newspapers, and mail systems. Road transportation is the same as the railroad system, but in this case, John McAdam, a Scottish engineer, improved roads a lot. He created a new layout for roads so they are safer and more effective. Overall, industrialization helped life in Europe a lot. It raised the standards of living since new materials and products were available for public use. However, not all of the effects of the new industries and factories were positive. Despite all these positive effects, industrialization had a negative impact too. Urban areas doubled, even quadrupled in size, which led to overcrowding in cities. Sometimes a large population in an area can be good, but during the revolution the population increased dramatically and caused health problems. Living conditions were dirty and unhealthy. Cities were unsanitary and diseases filled the streets. There was no implementing of sanitation codes in cities, causing citizens to get sick. Workers in factories were mistreated and were underpaid. Factory work was dirty and dangerous. They didn't get enough money for the labor they were providing. A short life expectancy was also common if you worked in a factory. The hours in a workday were very long business hours, and the treatment was harsh, and the government provided no regulations to this type of treatment. Child labor was also a negative effect. Businesses started to hire children to work in factories because it's easier for them to do things which require small hands or bodies, and they are paid less than the average factory worker. Their little hands come in handy while working in the machines in the factories, but it is also unsafe and a safety hazard. Working sanitations were also poor. Even though the Industrial Revolution helped in many ways, it also harmed. The lack of sanitation got many people sick. Working conditions also hurt citizens by causing illnesses, and children were also taken from the family homes on the farm to work in dirty and, to them, scary factories, which forced migration along with rural to urban migration was enforced.
During the Second Industrial Revolution, there became an increase of jobs available to women that consisted of office clerks and administrative positions, while they were still seen as inferior to males. However, women dominated in the textile industries and the domestic service and continued to keep the homes tidy and to raise the children, leading them into lives of toil and pain. Poor farmers were forced to send their young daughters to work in the textile factories to help contribute. Some worked as domestic servants, who commonly worked 16 hours a day and having nothing but a small room and a board that was usually located in the attics. Industrialized countries passed laws to protect women from long hours and dangerous occupations such as mining. Even among men, while working in factories, women will earn between 1/3 to 2/3 of the men's wages, known as the women's suffrage. Labor unions formed friendly societies for mutual assistance in times of illness, unemployment, and disability. The growth in labor unions grew slowly because they required a permanent staff as well as a great deal of money to sustain members during strikes. Just as labor unions strove to share in the benefits of the capitalist economy, so did electoral politics persuade workers to be a part of the existing political system. In order to refrain from any more strikes and to properly discuss the improvement of workers' pay and the working conditions within the factories. Although some states require villages and towns to keep schools that contain children for only 2 hours and with little materials, show some type of benefits within the industry. The Industrial Revolution influenced the increase of demand in skilled labor, so Western governments committed to the public education. Public education supports and preserves the democratic political system, which is caused by the democratic society needing. Capitalism is an economic system based on the private ownership of the means of production and in their operation for profit. Within the Industrial Revolution, it led to the investing in factories, increase in population, higher demands in raw materials, worldwide trade, and new inventions, and the changes in transportation, agriculture, and communication. The Industrial Revolution imitated the rise of capitalism in Europe and in North America. Motivated individuals could easily take advantage of the many economic opportunities of the situation, but the average person would need to be educated in order to do so. Capitalism created markets where buyers and sellers of goods and services could agree upon the pricings. Socialism is a range of economic and social systems characterized by social ownerships of the means of production and the workers' self-management, as well as the political theories and movements associated with them. Social ownership can be public, collective, or cooperative ownership. Socialism arose largely in the response to the economic and social consequences of the Industrial Revolution. Socialism is above all concerns with the relationship between individuals, states, and society. For the socialist, the individual is never alone, thus must be define himself or herself in a relation to others. Socialists believe that a well-ordered society cannot exist without a state apparatus, not at least because the state is seen as the most effective vehicle for the coordinating and administrating to the needs of all. It was their observation of the deleterious effects of industrial capitalism that caused socialist reforms to call for their development of the new economic structures based on a completely different set of moral principles. Socialism was used to distinguish the attitudes of those who laid stress on the social elements in human relations from those who emphasized the claim of the individual. Imperialism is a policy of extending a nation's rule over foreign nations, often by military force or by gaining political and economic control over other areas. In the Indian Ocean, the takeover of governments by European powers happened gradually but forcefully after 1800. The extraordinary powers of the East India Companies of the British and the Dutch were taken away, and the powers were replaced by direct rule from Britain. Some local rulers remained in name only, but the power to govern and tax. This authority was won as weak rulers confronted European weapons and tactics. European powers competed in the scramble for Africa in 1880, taking over one country after another. They were aided by weapons like quick-loading rifles on one hand and medicine that saved Europeans from tropical disease on the other. Everywhere, the colonized people resisted the arms, and with words, European colonial powers set up rules that gave advantages to European manufactured goods and made favorable conditions to buy raw material. This was the key to colonial economy. Other colonial powers acted in similar ways, and Britain became the largest colonial power by far in the 19th century. As a result of both imperialism and transportation, millions of people in the world began to migrate to other lands. During the 19th century, Europeans justified their rule over people by explaining that they had civilizing missions in the Indian Ocean region. To modernize lands and cultures, ideas of European racial superiority became apparent in colonial policies and what colonial officials wrote and spoke.